Honeybee. This is the latest accepted revision. A honeybee, also spelled honeybee, is a eusocial flying insect within the genus Apis of the bee clade, all native to mainland Afro-Eurasia. 1-2 After bees spread naturally throughout Africa and Eurasia, humans became responsible for the current cosmopolitan distribution of honeybees, introducing multiple subspecies into South America, early 16th century, North America, early 17th century, and Australia, early 19th century. 1. Honeybees on yellow ironweed, followed by segment at 1/10 speed. Honeybees are known for their construction of perennial colonial nests from wax, the large size of their colonies, and surplus production and storage of honey, distinguishing their hives as a prized foraging target of many animals, including honey badgers, bears, and human hunter-gatherers. Only 8 surviving species of honeybee are recognized, with a total of 43 subspecies, though historically 7 to 11 species are recognized. Honeybees represent only a small fraction of the roughly 20,000 known species of bees. The best-known honeybee is the western honeybee, Apis mellifera, which was domesticated for honey production and crop pollination. The only other domesticated bee is the eastern honeybee, Apis cerana, which occurs in South, Southeast, and East Asia. Only members of the genus Apis are true honeybees. 3. But some other types of bees produce and store honey and have been kept by humans for that purpose, including the stingless bees belonging to the genus Melipona and the Indian stingless or dammer bee Tetragonula iridipennis. Modern humans also use beeswax in making candles, soap, lip balms, and various cosmetics, as a lubricant and in mold making using the lost wax process. The genus name Apis is Latin for bee. 4-5 Although modern dictionaries may refer to Apis as either honeybee or honeybee, entomologist Robert Snodgrass asserts that correct usage requires 2 words, i.e., honeybee, because it is a kind or type of bee. It is incorrect to run the 2 words together, as in dragonfly or butterfly, which are appropriate because dragonflies and butterflies are not flies. 6. Honeybee, not honeybee, is the listed common name in the Integrated Taxonomic Information System, the Entomological Society of America Common Names of Insects database, and the Tree of Life web project. 7, 8, 9. Distribution of honeybees around the world. Morphology of a sterile female worker honeybee. Honeybee. Temporal range. Western honeybee on the bars of a horizontal top bar hive. Scientific classification domain, Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta order, Hymenoptera family, Apidae clade, Corbiculata. Tribe, Apini. Latreille, 1802. Genus, Apis. Linnaeus, 1758. Type species. Apis mellifera. Linnaeus, 1758. Species. Apis lithohermea, Apis nearctica. Etymology and name. Origin, systematics, and distribution. Honeybees appear to have their center of origin in South and Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, as all the extant species except Apis mellifera are native to that region. Notably, living representatives of the earliest lineages to diverge, Apis florea and Apis andreniformis, have their center of origin there. 2. The first Apis bees appear in the fossil record at the Eocene-Oligocene boundary, 34 Maya, in Europe. The origin of these prehistoric honeybees does not necessarily indicate Europe as the place of origin of the genus, only that the bees were present in Europe by that time. Few fossil deposits are known from South Asia, the suspected region of honeybee origin, and fewer still have been thoroughly studied. No Apis species existed in the New World during human times before the introduction of A. mellifera by Europeans. Only one fossil species is documented from the New World, Apis nearctica, known from a single 14-million-year-old specimen from Nevada. 10. The close relatives of modern honeybees, e.g., bumblebees and stingless bees, are also social to some degree, and social behavior is considered to be a trait that predates the origin of the genus. Among extant members of Apis, the more basal species make single, exposed combs, while the more recently evolved species nest in cavities and have multiple combs, which has greatly facilitated their domestication. Species. While about 20,000 species of bees exist, only 8 species of honeybee are recognized, with a total of 43 subspecies, although historically 7 to 11 species are recognized. 12. Apis andreniformis, the black dwarf honeybee Apis cerana, the eastern honeybee Apis dorsata, the giant honeybee Apis florea, the red dwarf honeybee Apis Koshevnikov's honeybee Apis laboriosa, the Himalayan giant honeybee Apis mellifera, the western honeybee, and Apis nigrocincta, the Philippine honeybee. 13. Honeybees are the only extant members of the tribe Apini. Today's honeybees constitute 3 clades: Micrapis, the dwarf honeybees, Megapes, the giant honeybee, and Apis, the western honeybee and its close relatives. 12. 14. Most species have historically been cultured or at least exploited for honey and beeswax by humans indigenous to their native ranges. Only 2 species have been truly domesticated, Apis mellifera and Apis cerana. A mellifera has been cultivated at least since the time of the building of the Egyptian pyramids, and only that species has been moved extensively beyond its native range. 15. Micrapis. Apis florea and Apis andreniformis are small honeybees of southern and southeastern Asia. They make very small, exposed nests in trees and shrubs. Their stings are often incapable of penetrating human skin, so the hive and swarms can be handled with minimal protection. They occur largely symmetrically, though they are very distinct evolutionarily and are probably the result of allopatric speciation, their distribution later converging. Given that Afloria is more widely distributed and Andreniformis is considerably more aggressive, honey is, if at all, usually harvested from the former only. They are the most ancient extant lineage of honeybees, maybe diverging in the Bartonian, some 40 million years ago or slightly later, from the other lineages, but do not seem to have diverged from each other a long time before the Neogene. 14. Apis florea have smaller wingspans than its sister species. 16. Apis florea are also completely yellow with the exception of the scutellum of workers, which is black. 16. Megapes. Two species are recognized in the subgenus Megapes. They usually build single or a few exposed combs on high tree limbs, on cliffs, and sometimes on buildings. They can be very fierce. Periodically robbed of their honey by human, honey hunters, colonies are easily capable of stinging a human being to death if provoked. Apis dorsata, the giant honeybee, is native and widespread across most of South and Southeast Asia. A. D. Binghami, the Indonesian giant honeybee, is classified as the Indonesian subspecies of the giant honeybee or a distinct species. In the latter case, A.D. Breviligula and or other lineages would probably also have to be considered species. 17. Apis laboriosa, the Himalayan giant honeybee, was initially described as a distinct species. Later, it was included in a dorsata as a subspecies 12 based on the biological species concept, though authors applying a genetic species concept have suggested it should be considered a separate species. 14, and more recent research has confirmed this classification. 18. Essentially restricted to the Himalayas, it differs little from the giant honeybee in appearance, but has extensive behavioral adaptations that enable it to nest in the open at high altitudes despite low ambient temperatures. It is the largest living honeybee. APIs. Western honeybee on a honeycomb. Eastern Apis species include 3 or 4 species, including a Koshevnikovi, a Nigrosincta, and A. serrana. The genetics of the western honeybee, a mellifera, are unclear. Koshevnikov B. Koshevnikov's honeybee, Apis koshevnikovi, is often referred to in the literature as the red bee of Sabah. However, a koshevnikovi is pale reddish in Sabah state, Borneo, Malaysia, but a dark, coppery color in the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra, Indonesia. 19. Its habitat is limited to the tropical evergreen forests of the Malay Peninsula, Borneo and Sumatra, and they do not live in tropical evergreen rainforests which extend into Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia and Vietnam. 19. Philippine honeybee. Apis nigrosincta is a cavity nesting species. The species has rust-colored scapes, legs, and clypeuses, with reddish-tan hair color that covers most of the body. 20. Eastern honeybee. Apis serrana, the eastern honeybee proper, is the traditional honeybee of southern and eastern Asia. One of its subspecies, the Indian honeybee, A. circa indica, was domesticated and kept in hives in a fashion similar to a mellifera, though on a more limited, regional scale. It has not been possible yet to resolve its relationship to the Bornean honeybee A. circa nuluensis and Apis nigrosincta from the Philippines to satisfaction. Some researchers argue that these are indeed distinct species, but that a serrana as defined is still paraphyletic, consisting of several separate species. 14. Though other researchers argue serrana as a single monophyletic species. 21. Western honeybee. The European honeybee may have originated from eastern Africa. This bee is pictured in Tanzania. A. mellifera, the most common domesticated 22 species, was first domesticated before 2600 BC. 23. And was the third insect to have its genome mapped. It seems to have originated in eastern tropical Africa and spread from there to Europe and eastwards into Asia to the Tian Shan range. It is variously called the European, Western, or common honeybee in different parts of the world. Many subspecies have adapted to the local geographic and climatic environments. In addition, breeds such as the buckfast bee have been bred. Behavior, color, and anatomy can be quite different from any subspecies or even strain to another. 24. A. mellifera phylogeny is the most enigmatic of all honeybee species. It seems to have diverged from its eastern relatives only during the late Miocene. This would fit the hypothesis that the ancestral stock of cave-nesting honeybees was separated into the western group of East Africa and the eastern group of tropical Asia by desertification in the Middle East and adjacent regions, which caused declines of food plants and trees that provided nest sites, eventually causing gene flow to cease. 24. The diversity of a mellifera subspecies is probably the product of a largely early Pleistocene radiation aided by climate and habitat changes during the last ice age. That the western honeybee has been intensively managed by humans for many millennia, including hybridization and introductions, has apparently increased the speed of its evolution and confounded the DNA sequence data to a point where little of substance can be said about the exact relationships of many a mellifera subspecies. 14. Apis mellifera is not native to the Americas, so it was not present when the European explorers and colonists arrived. However, other native bee species were kept and traded by indigenous peoples. 25. In 1622, European colonists brought the German honeybee A.M. mellifera to the Americas first, followed later by the Italian honeybee A.M. ligustica, and others. Many of the crops that depend on western honeybees for pollination have also been imported since colonial times. Escaped swarms, known as wild honeybees, but actually feral, spread rapidly as far as the Great Plains, usually preceding the colonists. Honeybees did not naturally cross the Rocky Mountains. They were transported by the Mormon pioneers to Utah in the late 1840s, and by ship to California in the early 1850s. 26. An Africanized honeybee left, and a European honeybee on a honeycomb. Africanized honeybee. Africanized honeybees, known colloquially as killer bees, are hybrids between European stock and the East African lowland subspecies A.M. scutellata. They are often more aggressive than European honeybees and do not create as much a honey surplus, but are more resistant to disease and are better foragers. 27. Accidentally released from quarantine in Brazil, they have spread to North America and constitute a pest in some regions. However, these strains do not overwinter well, so they are not often found in the colder, more northern parts of North America. The original breeding experiment for which the East African lowland honeybees were brought to Brazil in the first place has continued, though not as originally intended. Novel hybrid strains of domestic and redomesticated Africanized honeybees combine high resilience to tropical conditions and good yields. They are popular among beekeepers in Brazil. Honeybees have a tiny structure that appears similar to a human midbrain, so if it functions the same way, they may possibly be able to achieve a small amount of simple awareness of their bodies. A. Koshevnikovi enderline. Life cycle. As in a few other types of eusocial bees, a colony generally contains one queen bee, a female, seasonally up to a few thousand drone bees, or males, 30, and tens of thousands of female worker bees. Details vary among the different species of honeybees, but common features include 1. Eggs are laid singly in a cell in a wax honeycomb, produced and shaped by the worker bees. Using her spermatheca, the queen can choose to fertilize the egg she is laying, usually depending on which cell she is laying it into. Drones develop from unfertilized eggs and are haploid, while females, queens and worker bees, develop from fertilized eggs and are diploid. Larvae are initially fed with royal jelly produced by worker bees, later switching to honey and pollen. The exception is a larva fed solely on royal jelly, which will develop into a queen bee. The larva undergoes several moltings before spinning a cocoon within the cell, and pupating. 2. Young worker bees, sometimes called nurse bees, clean the hive and feed the larva. When their royal jelly-producing glands begin to atrophy, they begin building comb cells. They progress to other within-colony tasks as they become older, such as receiving nectar and pollen from foragers, and guarding the hive. Later still, a worker takes her first orientation flights and finally leaves the hive and typically spends the remainder of her life as a forager. 3. Worker bees cooperate to find food and use a pattern of dancing, known as the bee dance or waggle dance, to communicate information regarding resources with each other. This dance varies from species to species, but all living species of Apis exhibit some form of the behavior. If the resources are very close to the hive, they may also exhibit a less specific dance commonly known as the round dance. 4. Honeybees also perform tremble dances, which recruit receiver bees to collect nectar from returning foragers. 5. Virgin queens go on mating flights away from their home colony to a drone congregation area and mate with multiple drones before returning. The drones die in the act of mating. Queen honeybees do not mate with drones from their home colony. 6. Colonies are established not by solitary queens, as in most bees, but by groups known as swarms, which consist of a mated queen and a large contingent of worker bees. This group moves en masse to a nest site which was scouted by worker bees beforehand and whose location is communicated with a special type of dance. Once the swarm arrives, they immediately construct a new wax comb and begin to raise new worker brood. This type of nest founding is not seen in any other living bee genus, though several groups of vespid wasps also found new nests by swarming, sometimes including multiple queens. Also, stingless bees will start new nests with large numbers of worker bees, but the nest is constructed before a queen is escorted to the site, and this worker force is not a true swarm. Gallery. Honeybee eggs shown in opened wax cells. Eggs and larvae. Drone pupae. Emergence of a European dark honeybee, A.M. mellifera. Winter survival. In cold climates, honeybees stop flying when the temperature drops below about 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and crowd into the central area of the hive to form a winter cluster. The worker bees huddle around the queen bee at the center of the cluster, shivering to keep the center between 27 degrees Celsius, 81 degrees Fahrenheit, at the start of winter during the broodless period, and 34 degrees Celsius, 93 degrees Fahrenheit, once the queen resumes laying. The worker bees rotate through the cluster from the outside to the inside so that no bee gets too cold. The outside edges of the cluster stay at about 8-9 degrees Celsius, 46-48 degrees Fahrenheit. The colder the weather is outside, the more compact the cluster becomes. During winter, they consume their stored honey to produce body heat. The amount of honey consumed during the winter is a function of winter length and severity, but ranges in temperate climates from 15 to 50 kilograms, 33 to 110 pounds. 31. In addition, certain bees, including the western honeybee as well as Apis cerana, are known to engage in effective methods of nest thermoregulation during periods of varying temperature in both summer and winter. During the summer, however, this is achieved through fanning and water evaporation from water collected in various fields. 32-33. Pollination. Hind leg of a honeybee with pollen pellet stuck on the pollen basket or carbicula. When the worker bee is collecting pollen, their legs make the transfer of pollen from the inner basetarsal combs to the outer pollen basket, shown in figure 1039. Buzzing bees on the flowering plum. Of all the honeybee species, only a mellifera has been used extensively for commercial pollination of fruit and vegetable crops. The scale of these pollination services is commonly measured in the billions of dollars, credited with adding about 9% to the value of crops across the world. However, despite contributing substantially to crop pollination, there is debate about the potential spillover to natural landscapes and competition between managed honeybees and many of the approximately 20,000 species of wild pollinators. 34. Species of Apis are generalist floral visitors, and pollinate many species of flowering plants, but of all the honeybee species, only a mellifera has been used extensively for commercial pollination of fruit and vegetable crops. The scale of these pollination services is commonly measured in the billions of dollars, credited with adding about 9% to the value of crops across the world. However, despite contributing substantially to crop pollination, there is debate about the potential spillover to natural landscapes and competition between managed honeybees and many of the approximately 20,000 species of wild pollinators. 34. Species of Apis are generalist floral visitors, and pollinate many species of flowering plants, but because of their generalized nature, they often do so inefficiently. Without specialized adaptations for specific flowers, their ability to reach pollen and nectar is often limited. This combined with their behavioral flexibility may be why they are the most commonly documented pollen thieves. 35. Indeed, for plant species with more specialized pollinators, experiments show that increased honeybee visitation can actually reduce pollination, both where honeybees are non-native 36 and even where they are native. What's more, their tendency to visit all species in a given area means that the pollen they carry for any one species is often very diluted. As such, they can provide some pollination to many plants, but most plants have some native pollinator that is more effective at pollinating that species. 38. When honeybees are present as an invasive species in an area, they compete for flowers with native pollinators, which can actually push out the native species. 39. Claims of human dependency. Western honeybees have been described as essential to human food production, leading to claims that without their pollination humanity would starve or die out. 41. Apples, blueberries, and cherries, for example, are 90% dependent on honeybee pollination. 42. Albert Einstein is sometimes misquoted as saying, "If bees disappeared off the face of the earth, man would only have 4 years left to live." 43. Einstein did not say this and there is no science to support this prediction. 44. Many important crops need no insect pollination at all. The 10 most important crops, 45 comprising 60% of all human food energy, 46 fall into this category. Plantains are sterile and propagated by cuttings, as are cassava, potatoes, yams, and sweet potatoes are root vegetables propagated by tubers. Soybeans are self-pollinated, and rice, wheat, sorghum, and maize are wind-pollinated, as are most other grasses. 47. No crops originating in the New World depend on the western honeybee, Apis mellifera, at all, as the bee is an invasive species brought over with colonists in the last few centuries. 48. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, and all other New World crops evolved with native pollinators such as squash bees, bumblebees, and other native bees. The stingless bees mentioned by Jefferson are distant relatives of the honeybees, in the genus Melipona. Still, honeybees are considered crucial to the food supply, pollinating more than 100 of the crops we eat, including nuts, vegetables, berries, citrus and melons. 49. The USDA reports, 3/4 of the world's flowering plants and about 35% of the world's food crops depend on animal pollinators to reproduce. 50. And honeybees pollinate 80% of all flowering plants, including more than 130 types of fruits and vegetables. 51. Nutrition. A honeybee forager on a quince flower. Honeybees obtain all of their nutritional requirements from a diverse combination of pollen and nectar. Pollen is the only natural protein source for honeybees. Adult worker honeybees consume 3.4-4.3 milligrams of pollen per day to meet a dry matter requirement of 66-74% protein. 52. The rearing of one larva requires 125-187.5 milligrams pollen or 25-37.5 milligrams protein for proper development. 52. Dietary proteins are broken down into amino acids, 10 of which are considered essential to honeybees: methionine, tryptophan, arginine, lysine, histidine, phenylalanine, isoleucine, threonine, leucine, and valine. Of these amino acids, honeybees require highest concentrations of leucine, isoleucine, and valine, however elevated concentrations of arginine and lysine are required for brood rearing. 53. In addition to these amino acids, some B vitamins including biotin, folic acid, nicotinamide, riboflavin, thiamine, pantothenate, and most importantly, pyridoxine are required to rear larvae. Pyridoxine is the most prevalent B vitamin found in royal jelly and concentrations vary throughout the foraging season with lowest concentrations found in May and highest concentrations found in July and August. Honeybees lacking dietary pyridoxine were unable to rear brood. 53. A forager collecting pollen. Pollen is also a lipid source for honeybees ranging from 0.8% to 18.9%. 52. Lipids are metabolized during the brood stage for precursors required for future biosynthesis. Fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K are not considered essential but have shown to significantly improve the number of brood reared. 52. Honeybees ingest phytosterols from pollen to produce 24-methylcholesterol and other sterols as they cannot directly synthesize cholesterol from phytosterols. Nurse bees have the ability to selectively transfer sterols to larvae through brood food. 52. Nectar is collected by foraging worker bees as a source of water and carbohydrates in the form of sucrose. The dominant monosaccharides in honeybee diets are fructose and glucose, but the most common circulating sugar in hemolymph is trehalose, which is a disaccharide consisting of two glucose molecules. 54. Adult worker honeybees require 4 mg of utilizable sugars per day, and larvae require about 59.4 mg of carbohydrates for proper development. 52. Honeybees require water to maintain osmotic homeostasis, prepare liquid brood food, and to cool the hive through evaporation. A colony's water needs can generally be met by nectar foraging as it has high water content. Occasionally, on hot days or when nectar is limited, foragers will collect water from streams or ponds to meet the needs of the hive. 55. Beekeeping. A beekeeper inspecting a hive frame from a Langstroth hive. The modular design allows for easier management and honey harvesting. A professional beekeeper inspects hives for breeding and selection. Pendro. A professional beekeeper from Guria inspects a well-developed jumbo frame hive. Honeybee hive entrance with audio. The last part is at 1/4 speed. The only domesticated species of honeybee are a mellifera and a cerana, and they are often maintained, fed, and transported by beekeepers. In Japan, where a mellifera is vulnerable to local hornets and disease, the Japanese honeybee, a Cerana japonica, is used in its place. Modern hives also enable beekeepers to transport bees, moving from field to field as the crop needs pollinating and allowing the beekeeper to charge for the pollination services they provide, revising the historical role of the self-employed beekeeper, and favoring large-scale commercial operations. Bees of various types other than honeybees are also domesticated and used for pollination or other means around the world, including Tetragonula iridipennis in India, the blue orchard bee for tree nut and fruit pollination in the United States, and a number of species of bombus bumblebees for pollination in various regions globally, such as tomatoes, which are not effectively pollinated by honeybees. 56. Colony collapse disorder. Primarily in places where Western honeybees were imported by humans, periodic collapses in Western honeybee populations have occurred at least since the late 19th century. 57. However, as humans continued to manipulate the Western honeybee and deliberately transferred them on a global scale, diseases simultaneously spread and harmed managed colonies. Colony losses have occurred periodically throughout history. Fungus, mites, and starvation have all been thought to be the cause of the deaths. Limited occurrences resembling CCD were documented as early as 1869. 58-59 colony collapses were called May disease in Colorado in 1891 and 1896. 60. Starting in the first decade of the 21st century, abnormally high die-offs, 30-70% of hives, of Western honeybee colonies have occurred in North America. This has been dubbed colony collapse disorder, CCD, and was at first unexplained. 61. It seems to be caused by a combination of factors rather than a single pathogen or poison, possibly including neonicotinoid pesticides. 62. Or Israeli acute paralysis virus. 63. A survey by the University of Maryland and Auburn University published in 2023 found the number of United States honeybee colonies remained relatively stable, although 48% of colonies were lost in the year that ended April 1, 2023, with a 12-year average annual mortality rate of 39.6%. The previous year, 2021-2022, the loss was 39% and the 2020-2021 loss was 50.8%. Beekeepers told the surveying scientists that 21% loss over the winter is acceptable, and more than 3/5 of beekeepers surveyed said their losses were higher than that in 2022-2023. 49. Parasites. Acaripes woodi. Acaripes woodi, or tracheal mites, are parasitic mites which live and reproduce in adult bees' tracheae, or respiratory tubes, piercing the tube walls with their mouthparts to feed on hemolymph. To infest new hosts, the mites must find newly emerged bees. After 3 days, the bristles setae guarding the spiracles are firm enough to prevent the mites' entry into the tracheae. Mite infestations are known as acarine, and have been called Isle of Wight disease. 64. Galleria melonella. Larval stages of the moth Galleria melonella parasitize both wild and cultivated honeybees, in particular Apis mellifera and Apis cerana. Eggs are laid within the hive, and the larvae that hatch tunnel through and destroy the honeycombs that contain bee larvae and their honey stores. The tunnels they create are lined with silk, which entangles and starves emerging bees. Destruction of honeycombs also result in honey leaking and being wasted. Both G. melonella adults and larvae are possible vectors for pathogens that can infect bees, including the Israeli acute paralysis virus and the black queen cell virus. 65. To manage the mite, temperature treatments are possible, but also distorts wax of the honeycombs. Chemical fumigants, particularly CO2, are also used. 65. Varroa mites. Varroa mites are arguably the biggest threat to honeybees in the United States. 49. These mites invade hives and reproduce by laying eggs on pupa. The hatching mites eat away at the pupa, causing deformities as well as spreading disease. If not detected and treated early on, the mite population may increase to such an extent that the hive will succumb to the diseases and deformities caused by the mites. It was widely believed that the mites drank the blood of bees. However, a 2018 study article in PNAS, linking pesticides and gut health in bees, However, a 2018 study article in mite treatment Mite treatment is accomplished by several methods, including treatment strips and acid vaporization. Bee products. Honey. Honey is the complex substance made when bees ingest nectar, process it, and store the substance into honeycombs. 66 All living species of apis have had their honey gathered by indigenous peoples for consumption. A mellifera and a cerana are the only species that have had their honey harvested for commercial purposes. Beeswax. Worker bees of a certain age secrete beeswax from a series of exocrine glands on their abdomens. 67 They use the wax to form the walls and caps of the comb. As with honey, beeswax is gathered by humans for various purposes such as candle making, waterproofing, soap and cosmetics manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, art, furniture polish and more. 68. Bee bread. Bees collect pollen in their pollen baskets and carry it back to the hive. 69. Worker bees combine pollen, honey and glandular secretions and allow it to ferment in the comb to make bee bread. The fermentation process releases additional nutrients from the pollen and can produce antibiotics and fatty acids which inhibit spoilage. 70 Bee bread is eaten by nurse bees, younger workers, which produce the protein-rich royal jelly needed by the queen and developing larvae in their hypopharyngeal gland. Worker bees. 69. Worker bees combine pollen. 69. 69. 69. Bees collect pollen in their pollen baskets and carry it back to the hive. 69. Worker bees combine pollen, honey and glandular secretions and allow it to ferment in the comb to make bee bread. The fermentation process releases additional nutrients from the pollen and can produce antibiotics and fatty acids which inhibit spoilage. 70 Bee bread is eaten by nurse bees, younger workers, which produce the protein-rich royal jelly needed by the queen and developing larvae in their hypopharyngeal glands. In the hive, pollen is used as a protein source necessary during brood rearing. In certain environments, excess pollen can be collected from the hives of a mellifera and a cerana. The product is used as a health supplement. It has been used with moderate success as a source of pollen for hand pollination. Bees as food. Honey bee. Bees as food. However, a 2018 study in certain environments, excess pollen can be collected from the hives of a mellifera and a cerana. The product is used as a health supplement. It has been used with moderate success as a source of pollen for hand pollination. Bees as food. Bee brood, the eggs, larvae or pupae of honeybees, is however, a 2018 study article Bees as food. Bee brood, the eggs, larvae or pupae of honeybees, is nutritious and seen as a delicacy in countries such as Indonesia, 71, Mexico, Thailand, and many African countries. It has been consumed since ancient times by the Chinese and Egyptians. 73, 74. Adult wild honeybees are also consumed as a food in parts of China, including Yunnan. According to a worker at a Yunnan-based specialty restaurant, the bees are best served, deep fried with salt and pepper, and they are naturally sweet and tasty. Kelly Schmidt of CNN described the dish as one of Shanghai's weirdest foods. 75. Propolis. Propolis is a resinous mixture collected by honeybees from tree buds, sap flows or other botanical sources, which is used as a sealant for unwanted open spaces in the hive. 76. Propolis may cause severe allergic reactions and have adverse interactions with prescription drugs in some individuals. 77. Propolis is also used in wood finishes on string instruments. 78. Royal jelly. Royal jelly is a honeybee secretion used to nourish the larva. 79. It is marketed for its alleged but unsupported claims of health benefits. 80. 81. On the other hand, it may cause severe allergic reactions in some individuals. 82. Sexes and castes. Honeybees have 3 castes: drones, workers, and queens. 83. 84. 85. Drones are male, while workers and queens are female. 85. Drones. Honeybees have a haplodiploid system of sex determination. Drones are typically haploid, having only one set of chromosomes, and primarily exist for the purpose of reproduction. 85. They are produced by the queen if she chooses not to fertilize an egg or by an unfertilized laying worker. There are rare instances of diploid drone larvae. This phenomenon. There are 85. They are produced by the queen if she chooses not to fertilize an egg or by an unfertilized laying worker. There are rare instances of diploid drone larvae. This phenomenon usually arises when there are more than 2 generations of brother-sister mating. 86. Sex determination in honeybees is initially due to a single locus, called the complementary sex determiner, CSD, gene. In developing bees, if the conditions are that the individual is heterozygous for the CSD gene, they will develop into females. If the conditions are so that the individual is hemizygous or homozygous for the CSD gene, they will develop into males. The instances where the individual is homozygous at this gene are the instances of diploid males. 87. Drones take 24 days to develop, and may be produced from summer through to autumn, numbering as many as 500 per hive. 85. They are expelled from the hive during the winter months when the hive's primary focus is warmth and food conservation. 85. Drones have large eyes used to locate queens during mating flights. They do not defend the hive or kill intruders, and do not have a stinger. 88. Workers. Workers have two sets of chromosomes. 89. They are produced from an egg that the queen has selectively fertilized from stored sperm. Workers typically develop in 21 days. A typical colony may contain as many as 60,000 worker bees. 85. Workers exhibit a wider range of behaviors than either queens or drones. Their duties change with age in the following order, beginning with cleaning out their own cell after eating through their capped brood cell, feed brood, receive nectar, clean hive, guard duty, and foraging. 85. 88. Some workers engage in other specialized behaviors, such as undertaking, removing corpses of their nestmates from inside the hive. 88. Workers have morphological specializations, including the pollen basket carbicula. 90. Abdominal glands that produce beeswax, brood-feeding glands, and barbs on the sting. Under certain conditions, for example, if the colony becomes queenless, a worker may develop ovaries. Worker honeybees perform different behavioral tasks that cause them to be exposed to different local environments. 91. 92. The gut microbial composition of workers varies according to the landscape and plant species they forage, such as differences in rapeseed crops. 91. And with different hive tasks, such as nursing or food processing. 92. Queens. Queen honeybees are created when worker bees feed a single female larva an exclusive diet of a food called royal jelly. 85. 88. Queens are produced in oversized cells and develop in only 16 days. They differ in physiology, morphology, and behavior from worker bees. In addition to the greater size of the queen, she has a functional set of ovaries, and a spermatheca, which stores and maintains sperm after she has mated. API's queens practice polyandry, with one female mating with multiple males. The highest documented mating frequency for an API's queen is in Apis nigrocincta, where queens mate with an extremely high number of males with observed numbers of different matings ranging from 42 to 69 drones per queen. 93. The sting of queens is not barbed like a worker's sting, and queens lack the glands that produce beeswax. Once mated, queens may lay up to 2,000 eggs per day. 88. They produce a variety of pheromones that regulate the behavior of workers, and help swarms track the queen's location during the swarming. 88. Queen-worker conflict. When a fertile female worker produces drones, a conflict arises between her interests and those of the queen. The worker shares half her genes with the drone and 1/4 with her brothers, favoring her offspring over those of the queen. The queen shares half her genes with her sons and 1/4 with the sons of fertile female workers. When a queen-worker conflict. When a fertile female worker produces drones, a conflict arises between her interests and those of the queen. The worker shares half her genes with the drone and 1/4 with her brothers, favoring her offspring over those of the queen. The queen shares half her genes with her sons and 1/4 with the sons of fertile female workers. 94. This pits the worker against the queen and other workers, who try to maximize their reproductive fitness by rearing the offspring most related to them. This relationship leads to a phenomenon known as worker policing. In these rare situations, other worker bees in the hive who are genetically more related to the queen's sons than those of the fertile workers will patrol the hive and remove worker-laid eggs. Another form of worker-based policing is aggression toward fertile females. 95. Some studies have suggested a queen pheromone which may help workers distinguish worker and queen-laid eggs, but others indicate egg viability as the key factor in eliciting the behavior. 96. 97. Worker policing is an example of forced altruism, where the benefits of worker reproduction are minimized and that of rearing the queen's offspring maximized. In very rare instances, workers subvert the policing mechanisms of the hive, laying eggs which are removed at a lower rate by other workers. This is known as anarchic syndrome. 96. 97. Worker policing is an example of forced altruism, where the benefits of worker reproduction are minimized and that of rearing the queen's offspring maximized. In very rare instances, workers subvert the policing mechanisms of the hive, laying eggs which are removed at a lower rate by other workers. This is known as anarchic syndrome. Anarchic workers can activate their ovaries at a higher rate and contribute a greater proportion of males to the hive. Although an increase in the number of drones would decrease the overall productivity of the hive, the reproductive fitness of the drone's mother would increase. Anarchic syndrome is an example of selection working in opposite directions at the individual and group levels for the stability of the hive. 98. Under ordinary circumstances, the death or removal of a queen increases reproduction in workers, and a significant proportion of workers will have active ovaries in the absence of a queen. The workers of the hive produce a last batch of drones before the hive eventually collapses. Although during this period worker policing is usually absent, in certain groups of bees it continues. 99. According to the strategy of kin selection, worker policing is not favored if a queen does not mate multiple times. Workers would be related by 3/4 of their genes, and the difference in relationship between sons of the queen and those of the other workers would decrease. The benefit of policing is negated, and policing is less favored. Experiments confirming this hypothesis have shown a correlation between higher mating rates and increased rates of worker policing in many species of social Hymenoptera. 100. Timeline of reproduction. For Apis mellifera, queens are the central reproducers among their colonies. Although reproduction may occur around the calendar, it may stop in the late fall due to falling temperatures. If a colony does not have a queen or she is unable to reproduce, workers are able to lay unfertilized eggs that may develop into males. The queens, however, do not reach this point immediately. Typically, it takes a queen 16 days to reach adulthood, with an additional week to begin developing and laying eggs. 101. To begin the process of reproduction in a honeybee colony, workers begin to produce queen larvae while simultaneously finding a place to create a new hive. 101. The queen larva will then hatch at the old hive, and the queens will fight one another until there is only a single queen left to begin reproducing. 101. Reproductive strategies. Once a queen matures and is ready to begin reproducing, she will begin making flights to orient to mating in free flight and finding mates before actually beginning to mate. Queens that are ready to mate take between 1 and 6 flights across multiple consecutive days, called nuptial flights. Once a queen matures and is ready to begin reproducing, she will begin making flights to orient to mating in free flight and finding mates before actually beginning to mate. Queens that are ready to mate take between 1 and 6 flights across multiple consecutive days, called nuptial flights. 102. Over the course of their nuptial flights, queens engage with multiple mates and have little control over the number of times they do so. 101. The process of queens engaging with their mates is not widely understood because the process takes place in free flight, so it is difficult to observe despite various advances in technology and observation techniques. It begins with drones flying in the same area where they know the queen will soon arrive, waiting for her to join them. 103. When the queen arrives, she is crowded immediately by the drones who are eager to mate with her. The drones receive a signal from the queen that her sting chamber is open, which induces the drones to mate with her and bring forward their physical contact, which warrants reproduction. A successful drone clasps onto the queen and releases seminal fluid and spermatozoa into the queen. After this process is complete, the drone typically remains inside of the queen, which is indicative of the drone's desire to deter other drones from engaging with the queen and reproducing. 104. This behavior also indicates that if the drone blocks other drones from mating with the queen, it will allow the mating drone to fertilize a greater number of the queen's eggs. If the drone does not remain within the queen and removes itself from her, the drone is able to reproduce again with slim chances. Finally, the drone will die after mating with the queen within minutes or hours after reproduction is complete. Defense. Apis cerana japonica forming a ball around 2 hornets. The body heat trapped by the ball will overheat and kill the hornets. All honeybees live in colonies where the workers sting intruders as a form of defense, and alarmed bees release a pheromone that stimulates the attack response in other bees. The different species of honeybees are distinguished from all other bee species by the possession of small barbs on the sting, but these barbs are found only in the worker bees. 105. The sting apparatus, including the barbs, may have evolved specifically in response to predation by vertebrates, as the barbs do not usually function, and the sting apparatus does not detach unless the sting is embedded in fleshy tissue. While the sting can also penetrate the membranes between joints in the exoskeleton of other insects, and is used in fights between queens, in the case of Apis cerana japonica, defense against larger insects such as predatory wasps, e.g. Asian giant hornet, is usually performed by surrounding the intruder with a mass of defending worker bees, which vibrate their muscles vigorously to raise the temperature of the intruder to a lethal level, falling. 106. Previously, heat alone was thought to be responsible for killing intruding wasps, but recent experiments have demonstrated the increased temperature in combination with increased carbon dioxide levels within the ball produce the lethal effect. 107. 108. This phenomenon is also used to kill a queen perceived as intruding or defective, an action known to beekeepers as balling the queen, named for the ball of bees formed. Defense can vary based on the habitat of the bee. In the case of those honeybee species with open combs, e.g., a dorsata, would-be predators are given a warning signal that takes the form of a wave that spreads as a ripple across a layer of bees densely packed on the surface of the comb when a threat is perceived, and consists of bees momentarily arching their bodies and flicking their wings. 109. In cavity-dwelling species such as Apis cerana, Apis mellifera, and Apis nigrocincta, entrances to these cavities are guarded and checked for intruders in incoming traffic. 109. In cavity-dwelling species such as Apis cerana, Apis mellifera, and Apis nigrocincta, entrances to these cavities are guarded and checked for intruders in incoming traffic. Another act of defense against nest invaders, particularly wasps, is body shaking, a violent and pendulum-like swaying of the abdomen, performed by worker bees. 110. A 2020 study of Apis cerana in Vietnam found that they use feces and even human urine to defend their hives against raids by hornets, Vespa soror, a strategy not replicated by their European and North American counterparts. 111. Though collection and use of feces in nest construction is well known in stingless bees. 112. 113. Venom. The stings of honeybees are barbed and therefore embed themselves into the sting site, and the sting apparatus has its own musculature and ganglion which keep delivering venom even after detachment. 114. The gland which produces the alarm pheromone is also associated with the sting apparatus. The embedded stinger continues to emit additional alarm pheromone after it has torn loose. Other defensive workers are thereby attracted to the sting site. The worker dies after the sting becomes lodged and is subsequently torn loose from the bee's abdomen. The honeybee's venom, known as apitoxin, carries several active components, the most abundant of which is melittin, 115, and the most biologically active are enzymes, particularly phospholipase A2. 116. Honeybee venom is under laboratory and clinical research for its potential properties and uses in reducing risks for adverse events from bee venom therapy. 117. Rheumatoid arthritis. 118. And uses an immunotherapy for protection against allergies from insect stings. The honeybee's venom, known as apitoxin, carries several active components, the most abundant of which is melittin, 115, and the most biologically active are enzymes, particularly phospholipase A2. 116. Honeybee venom is under laboratory and clinical research for its potential properties and uses in reducing risks for adverse events from bee venom therapy. 117. Rheumatoid arthritis. 118. And uses in immunotherapy for protection against allergies from insect stings. 119. Bee venom products are marketed in many countries, but, as of 2018, there are no approved clinical uses for these products which carry various warnings for potential allergic reactions. 120. Competition. With an increased number of honeybees in a specific area due to beekeeping, western honeybees, as an invasive species, and native wild bees often have to compete for the limited habitat and food sources available. 121. And western honeybees may become defensive in response to the seasonal arrival of competition from other colonies, particularly Africanized bees which may be on the offense and defense year-round due to their tropical origin. 122. Communication. Honeybees are known to communicate through many different chemicals and odors, as is common in insects. They also rely on a sophisticated dance language that conveys information about the distance and direction to a specific location, typically a nutritional source, e.g., flowers or water. The dance language is also used during the process of colony fission, or swarming, when scouts communicate the location and quality of nesting sites. 123. The details of the signaling being used vary from species to species. For example, the two smallest species, Apis andreniformis and Afloria, dance on the upper surface of the comb, which is horizontal, not vertical, as in other species, and worker bees orient the dance in the actual compass direction of the resource to which they are recruiting. Carniolan honeybees, Apis mellifera carnica, use their antennae asymmetrically for social interactions, with a strong lateral preference to use their right antennae. 124. 125. There has been speculation as to honeybee consciousness. 126. While honeybees lack the parts of the brain that a human being uses for consciousness like the cerebral cortex or even the cerebrum itself, when those parts of a human brain are damaged, the midbrain seems able to provide a small amount of consciousness. Honeybees have a tiny structure that appears similar to a human midbrain, so if it functions the same way they may possibly be able to achieve a small amount of simple awareness of their bodies. Symbolism. The bee was used as a symbol of government by Emperor Napoleon I of France. 127. Both the Hindu Atharva Veda, 128, and the ancient Greeks associated lips anointed with honey with the gift of eloquence and even of prescience. The priestess at Delphi was the Delphic bee. The Quran has a surah chapter titled, The Bee. It is named after honeybees, and contains a comparison of the industry and adaptability of honeybees to the industry of man. 129. And your Lord inspired the bees, make your homes in the mountains, the trees, and in what people construct, and feed from the flower off any fruit you please and follow the ways your Lord has made easy for you. From their bellies comes forth liquid of varying colors, in which there is healing for people. Surely in this is a sign for those who reflect. Surah An-Nahl 16, 68-69, 100. In ancient Egyptian mythology, honeybees were believed to be born from the tears of the sun god, Ra. 131. Because of their divine origin, they were used to represent the pharaoh. They were also used as a symbol of Lower Egypt in conjunction with the sedge, which represented Upper Egypt. 132. In Joseph and Asenath, a work composed by ancient Egyptian Jews who may have been affiliated with the Leontopolis temple, bee and honey imagery appears when Asenath converts and is visited by an angel. If the work was indeed connected to the Leontopolis temple, the bees likely represent Levite priests, and the imagery intends to signify the legitimacy of a Jewish temple in Egypt. 133. A community of honeybees has often been employed by political theorists as a model of human society, from Aristotle and Plato to Virgil. 134. 135. Honeybees, signifying immortality and resurrection, were royal emblems of the Merovingians. The state of Utah is called the beehive state. The state emblem is the beehive, the state insect is the honeybee, and a beehive and the word industry appear on both the state flag and seal. 1.